Hey everybody, it's Mike. All right, so today I want to address a very common experience and response from non-borderlines after they have been out of a relationship with an untreated borderline. So this channel again is designed for people who have been in romantic relationships with other people who have a serious case of untreated borderline personality disorder. I'm not a therapist, so don't take anything I say as a replacement for therapy, and anything you do, any actions you take based on these videos is your responsibility. All right, so obviously if you have been or are in a relationship with somebody who is an untreated borderline, again, I'm using the word untreated. If you're in a relationship with an untreated borderline, then you know what I'm talking about. The absolute pain, the devastation, the toxicity. I mean, it just destroys you from the inside out. And it's very easy to mistake borderline personality disorder for narcissistic personality disorder, and it's hard to know if there is any comorbidity, which means that somebody can be BPD and NPD at the same time. So what I read, and I could quote some comments, but I'm not going to, but basically they say the same thing. I said it. There's at least one video in the past where I've said something to the effect of, they plan out your demise, that they're brilliant at planning out when to harm you the most. I have since modified my opinion for two reasons. Number one, I've done more research into borderline personality disorder, and I have listened to people with borderline personality disorder who have been in therapy for a long time and are aware, painfully aware of how their mental illness functions, their disorder, whatever word you want to use. And also, the second reason is because I have done healing to myself, which means that I've gone to therapy, I've worked the 12 steps of Codependence Anonymous, and I continue with my daily spiritual practice. And so what that has given me is given me some hindsight into myself and into them. So I'm not talking about somebody who has comorbid BPD and NPD. That's something else. But what you should know is that the effects of the behavior of the borderline will look and feel identical to somebody who is a narcissist. So a narcissist plans out. They actually consciously plan out your demise. They get pleasure out of harming you. They plan it out. They're not only planning out your demise, they're planning out how they are going to use you and what they're going to take from you. And they see you as an object and all that other stuff. And, so that's their mental illness. So that is very clear. But in my experience, and again, I could be wrong, in my experience, the narcissists are easier to spot, because when somebody's planning out a demise, they make more mistakes. They don't act it out as well. They're not, they have tells, right? A pure borderline, the reason why they actually can be more damaging in some instances than a narcissist is because they are as much a victim of what their mental illness does to them and to you. They're as much a victim of it as you are. Some might even argue there might be more of a victim. But the fact that they aren't planning it out, the fact that they are trapped in their fantasy of wanting to be loved and to love you, and every time that they hoover you back, they split back and they go into a idealization phase, they have every intention of staying there. You have to understand, that's where they want to be. The idealization phase is where they want to be too. They don't want to be in the devaluation phase. They don't enjoy that. They want to be loved, and they want to feel like they love you. So, this is the mental illness part. They probably, this is true just of all of us. For me, when I have a really, really bad time, if I'm in a bad space, if I'm feeling, depressed, or I'm feeling angry, or confused, or, lack of inspiration, or, judging myself, there's this sense that I've always felt this way and I will always feel this way. When I'm in a good place and I'm feeling hopeful and inspired and self-empowered, then there's this feeling of invincibility that I'm always going to feel like this now that I've figured it out. But that's just part of the human condition. Bear in mind that whatever we go through, we meaning whatever that means, the borderline goes through the same thing, but in a far more intense way. So they're not planning it out. What I've heard and I believe is that when they're in the devaluation phase, especially when they're seeking to destroy the relationship, they see themselves saying things and doing things, and there's a part of them that is watching, knowing that it's not true, but they can't stop it. There's this impulse to protect themselves, and so it's, I've said in the last video, treat that like there's three people in the relationship. There's you, there's the borderline, and then there's the disorder that they carry with them. And that disorder is making decisions for both of you. And when it decides to devalue you, it's as if it steps in between the borderline and you and starts hurling attacks and judgments and accusations. And it's like, for the borderline, it's an impulse, it's their self-defense impulse that is working for them. And the feeling of needing to defend themselves from a perceived threat is, on the one hand, an irresistible feeling, and at the same time there's a part of them, some of the time, maybe not all the time, but some of the time, where they know it's not accurate, but they can't stop themselves because they feel they have to protect themselves. So there's as much disconnect for them as there is for you. Whether or not they're able to admit that is a whole other thing. I mean, I think that's where therapy comes in, because therapy will allow them the space to have the ability to acknowledge what's happening. And if they can get to that place, maybe they can start changing their behavior, which is really what this is all about. So something more I want to say, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. If you are a partner or an ex-partner of a borderline, and especially afterwards, what happens is, once you're out of the relationship, especially if you've been discarded, like if they've cheated on you or damaged you, or like mine did, just destroyed it beyond repair, and now you can't go back. Even if you wanted to go back, you couldn't. You're so destroyed and so damaged, and or they're with somebody else now, or something like that, where there's just no way it's ever going to get healed. Then you start to get out of some of your denial, but in order to protect yourself, you go in the other direction. You kind of do what they do, which is you focus on the worst aspects, and trust me, it's very bad. When somebody betrays you or cheats on you, or physically harms you or accuses you of things that you never did, it's horrible. But you focus on those things, and you focus on how it feels, and it feels exactly like somebody who has planned out, who is an absolute criminal genius mastermind, who has planned out the most intense way to destroy you possible. And so it's logical to then want to judge them as these evil masterminds of destruction who have planned out your demise. And if you look at it, you'll be able to piece together that, yeah, they have. Like with mine, I told her early on about the most, painful things in my, because she brought it out in me. She wanted to, get close to me. And so, they bring out the most vulnerable things in you because that's what they feed off of. It's really what they want. There's really nothing wrong with that. Somebody else could do that exact same thing and then be there for you to help heal those things. So what ends up happening is they're wanting to do the same thing. They also feed off of emotional intimacy. And so when you start to reveal your deepest pains and secrets, and my ex did this to me, and my wife and my mother did this to me, and which is what I did, then, I'm going to take care of you, and we're going to make, she even listed all the ways that she was going to heal all the pain that anybody else had ever done to me. And she meant it. I believe that she meant every word of it. But she ended up using all of those things, or her disease, her mental illness ended up using all of those things in an absolutely brilliant fashion at the worst possible time. After I had asked her, I specifically said to her, please don't reject me during the holidays. It's the worst time of the year for me. I won't be able to handle it. At least wait until after New Year's. So what did she do? She rejected me on Christmas Day. So it's really easy for me, and I was saying it afterwards, that she planned it out, that they're narcissistic and they're sociopathic and they have no empathy. The truth is that when they are in the devaluation phase and they're splitting, it's true that they don't have empathy, but neither do you when you're in similar situations. Imagine if you're in the street and some guy is coming at you with a knife to steal your money or your life. You're gonna strike out at that person in whatever way you need to, and you're not going to be thinking about how it's going to make them feel. You're thinking about protecting yourself. So anybody, when they're in that feeling of needing to protect your life from a real threat, doesn't have empathy. And that's the disconnect, because normal situations of disagreement for the rest of us aren't life and death. For them, it's life and death. And remember, their illness makes them think that you are trying to destroy them. And so they act in ways to defend themselves, but it happens to be verbally, and they say horrible things that they don't mean, that they know aren't true, but they can't stop themselves because their self-defense mechanism is kicking in. So anyway, I wanted to go into this whole thing about, bottom line is this: if you think that your borderline planned it out, your demise, and that they are these evil geniuses, it means that you're in denial on an unconscious level. It means that on an unconscious level, you still want them to take you back, because if you think that they can change and that they have the ability to choose when they're going to be harmful to you or not, it means that you really want them to stop and choose to love you. If you can understand that they can't, that they're as much a victim of their mental illness as you are, then the denial will recede. Otherwise, you will set yourself up. If you're walking around with an unhealed wound, or you're angry and you think that they did it to you, it means that on an unconscious level you want them back, and it means that you will find another one. Another borderline will find you, or a narcissist. So my three-pronged approach: you got to go to therapy, got to work the 12 steps of CODA, CODA.org, and you got to have a daily spiritual practice. Okay? All right, more coming from freedoms.spirittao.com soon, but anyway, that's it for me at the moment. I gotta go to work. All right, talk to you guys later. Oops.